President Muhammadu Buhari says Nigeria and South Africa need to strengthen people-to-people relations to prevent unhealthy competition among their citizens. At the 10th session of the Nigeria and South African Binational Commission in Abuja, Buhari reiterates Nigeria's commitment to improve a special relationship, in quote, with South Africa. He is hoping that this will translate into gains for the continent, particularly in education, science, trade and investment, tourism and security.
Today has witnessed the signing of new memoranda of understanding between Nigeria and South Africa in diverse areas, including youth development, women and child empowerment, and political consultations, critical areas that will lead to increased people-to-people contact. Existing memorandums of understanding signed during previous binational commission meetings were also reviewed. These include memorandums of understanding on military cooperation, power, cooperation in the field of geology, mining, and mineral processing, oil and gas, and several others.
It is furthermore a means for our ministers to interact and share ideas about new opportunities in trade and investment between our two countries. We want to improve the balance of trade between our two countries, and we are extremely encouraged by the interest expressed by a number of Nigerian businesses in accessing the South African market. We are particularly encouraged by the interest from Nigerian banks, and it has been recommended they work with the South African regulatory authorities to facilitate their access into the financial sector in South Africa.
At the end of the 10th session of the Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission in Abuja, President Muhammadu Buhari departed for the 2020 Dubai Expo in the United Arab Emirates. The expo, which was delayed by coronavirus last week, kicked off in September. It is the first world fair in the Middle East expected to last 182 days. Nigeria will be leveraging on the conference to showcase Nigeria's economic achievements in the last 6 years and encouraging foreign investors to invest their money in Nigeria. President Buhari will be Nigeria's special guest of honor at the Special Trade and Investment Forum themed Unveiling Investment Opportunities in Nigeria. He's expected back in the country on Sunday, December 5.
Well, of course, one of the highlights of that Dubai trip, I imagine, will be the Arise fashion show, which is holding on Friday, December 3rd. And I'm not there, Dr. Baten, you're smiling. And you know, I blame you.
Well,
I took advice from Dr. Baten.
You have other commitments.
I said, should I go? More important. Yeah. He said, no. And you know, I have to obey. And that was that. So, yeah, so looking forward to that. That's going to be a great showing. But I do have to say that this trip, the South African trip, I think it's really went swimmingly. And I found those speeches really reassuring. I remember all the awful images that we saw from the xenophobic attacks and what have you. And I don't imagine that they will disappear overnight. And if those two leaders thought so, they would not have been talking about the early warning mechanism. So we're still reminded that that danger is ever present. But I like the measures that they're taking to sort of counteract those dangers and ensure that it doesn't rear its ugly head ever again. That Nigeria-South Africa youth dialogue is extremely important. Obviously, there have been collaborations unofficially, but I like the fact that the two countries are actually focusing on the youth with regards to peace and security, youth development, and political participation. That is extremely important. And Cyril Ramaphosa did not miss an opportunity, once again, to stick it to a few countries about the travel ban, which, as more data comes out, we see is increasingly less science-based. We see that it's really about political expediency, you know, baseless hysteria, and his position has been vindicated, well, so far. So he is right to continue to call for those bans to be lifted. But yes, I do think this was a really great outing, and President Buhari is now off to Dubai to continue his socio-economic diplomacy and really trying to fly the flag for Nigeria and present us as the most attractive investment destination.
Okay. Well, the importance of the visit, it was a state visit. And as I said in the previous comment, a state visit is the highest level of engagement between two sovereign states, as different from an official visit and as different from a state visit. So the South Africans visiting Nigeria, a state visit, I think it's a very strong signal on both sides in terms of a determination to further deepen the relationship between both countries. And usually it's reciprocal. If President Buhari has not had a state visit to South Africa, you can imagine very soon, there will be a reciprocal visit. And it's important to see these two major countries in South Africa, in Africa, coming together. Nigeria and South Africa have a very long history, and you can divide it into phases. Between 1948 to 1990, when they had, up to the early 90s, when they had an apartheid regime in South Africa, the position of, Nigeria in terms of, a relationship with South Africa was one of opposition to any form of colonialism in Africa. And when the African Union, or the Organization of African Union, was established in 1963, Nigeria was one of those countries opposed, to the apartheid regime in South Africa. And in 1961, South Africa was expelled from the Commonwealth. Nigeria was part of that. So during that period of the apartheid rule in South Africa, Nigeria was one of those countries in the front line of ensuring, that other African countries work for the liberation. Nigeria was, in fact, a member of the Liberation Committee. And from Tafawa Balewa to Gowon to, all the, to Murtala Muhammad, to Obasanjo, we had Nigeria in the forefront of that struggle against apartheid rule in South Africa. Many South Africans were given scholarships. Many South Africans, black South Africans that is, lived in Nigeria, including Thabo Mbeki, and Nigeria was in the forefront of that struggle against apartheid. Now, in 1994, we had the end of apartheid. So there was a slight change in, Nigeria's attitude to South Africa. With Mbeki, with Mandela as president, with Mbeki as president, you find Nigeria now reaching out to the new government in South Africa. You think that this was a major victory also for Nigeria and the efforts that have been made in the frontline states. However, post-apartheid, there have been contradictions in terms of the relationship between Nigeria and South Africa. And those contradictions were, accentuated, in my view, by President Buhari when he talked about the need to end the unhealthy competition between Nigeria and South Africa. You find that President Buhari also stressed person-to-person diplomacy as opposed to G2G, which is government-to-government diplomacy. And the big problem we've had is at the level of person-to-person diplomacy. And you refer to that when you talk about xenophobia. Now, after the return to black rule in South Africa, you then find a situation whereby many of the other countries that helped South Africa were now seen as outsiders. I mean, Nigeria gave over 300, South Africans visas at a time when their own country would not allow them to even travel. We accommodated them here. But Nigerians became a major target because many Nigerians, over 24,000 of them, after there was freedom in South Africa, moved to South Africa. They took the retail end of the business, and then you had this resentment. The resentment was not just directed towards Nigerians, also towards other people from Malawi, from Zimbabwe. And so Africa was presented with this paradox, of these people who had exited, blacks who had exited from apartheid, but who were engaged in black-on-black violence, not even among South Africans themselves, but also against other people. So I think that President Buhari struck a good note by saying, what can we do at the level of person-to-person diplomacy? Because government can relate, but it's also important that the people can relate together. And we have had episodes of xenophobic attacks against Nigerians. That's very important. And I think it was also along that line that President Buhari commended President Ramaphosa for coming up with the South African-Nigeria Youth Group. But the big platform is the South African Binational Commission, which was established in 2009 as a platform for the two countries, promoting trade and investment, which was what President Ramaphosa was referring to. But if you look at it in terms of trade and investment relations, between both countries. South Africa will seem to have an advantage. There are over 200 South African countries doing business in Nigeria, including MTN, including DSTV MultiChoice. We don't have that kind of weight within the South African business space. Okay, Dangote, I think, is there. Yeah. One other Nigerian company is there. Okay, 2 compared to over 200. So we need to look at the balance of trade in terms of how to get better advantages for Nigerians that want to do business in South Africa. South Africa imports majorly oil in addition to the businesses they have here from Nigeria. There has been an attempt at cooperation at the level of security, but that again, we have had very sad episodes. And in terms of rivalry, rivalry at the level of the Security Council, rivalry at the African Union. The last, when Mrs. Zuma became chairperson of the African Union Commission, Nigeria supported Jean-Ping from Gabon. So we have this tension. So it's important that the two leaders are, coming together and they are talking. And I would like to see a South African-Nigeria binational commission that is more effective, that meets on a more regular basis. But even in that regard, the problem I have with our foreign affairs process, I've always said this. Look, Nigeria doesn't do the follow-up. We hold these meetings, we make all these commitments, we form subcommittees, but Nigeria is very poor, at following up. And other countries take advantage of us, in that regard, because we tend to drop the ball. So it's not enough to blame other countries having an advantage. Do we do enough? How much rigor goes into our follow-up process in terms of foreign relations? Now, President Buhari is going to Dubai, Expo 2020. Over 190 countries participating. Nigeria National Day on Friday, and on Saturday, Investment Forum. Well, President Buhari has been consistent in promoting Nigeria, trade and investment opportunities in Nigeria. Most recently, he was in France. Before then, he was in Saudi Arabia. Before then, he was also promoting Nigeria as chief marketing officer on the floor of the United Nations General Assembly. All of this is good. But if you look at the summit that was facilitated in France and led by the CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, key issues that came out include security in Nigeria. I know some people say, well, investors just follow the money, they don't worry about security. But I think there is a linkage, which was one of the outcomes of that summit, France-Nigeria summit that we had recently. And I think that domestic policy, what we're taught is that domestic policy drives foreign policy. So whatever we do at the level of foreign policy engagements, either at trade fairs or in terms of visiting heads of state, we must get domestic policy right. Because when we don't get our domestic policy right, then the foreign policy end puts us in a vulnerable position.
Right, a lot to say continually about the relationship between Nigeria and South Africa, which dates back a while back, even before an independent and an inclusive South Africa was born. When you look at the trenches of apartheid, when you look at one of the first countries that kicked against, the inhumanity perpetrated against the blacks in South Africa, bad policies like the Bantustans and the likes, it was Nigeria. And we all remember the good old days of how Nigeria contributed money in secondary schools. They made donations and collections. Yeah,
students gave.
Students gave to the apartheid struggle. Most of their key leaders were here. In fact, there's a story fondly told about Thabo Mbeki living in 1004 estates here, And there's also a story told about these people, going to Nigerian universities and the like. But we'll move on now to Bayelsa State. It is 1 month since the blowout at the Aicho OML 27, and efforts by the company to kill the well-held and contain the oil pollution into the Santa Barbara River has failed. Cutting short his annual leave, Governor Doyediri of Bayelsa State returned to the country to visit the site of the spill. A rights correspondent of Yetimi George reports.
Governor Doyediri boards a boat at the Nembe jetty. It is a bumpy ride on the waters of Basambari as the waves lead us on. Finally, we arrive at the site of the spill, also called Borikumakiri. The governor sees firsthand the rage of a stubborn ITO wellhead, defying attempts by the oil company to kill it. A conversation on the river suggests that the pollution may last for another week.
I can assure you, we have handled a similar case like this before, and in the next couple of days, you will have positive results.
I don't understand when you say couple of days. A couple of days could be another 1 month again. It could be another 2 months again. Is that what you are telling me?
In less than a week, sir.
In less than a week. That's why I said I wanted you to be precise. So in less than a week, this spill will be stopped, fully arrested. By your estimate, you have recovered about 2 million barrels of oil. And where is the recovered oil?
We take it back. I've been waving at them.
The Bayelsa governor stops occasionally to speak with the people. Other inhabitants of some communities and fishing settlements in proximity to the troubled spot also paddle ashore to get the attention of Governor Diri.
The government is ready to do it, but who are those things will be coming from is the problem here. So please, sir, we are really suffering in this place. You do a lot, but after everything you will do to us, we see just a dime on it. We thank you, sir.
I'm aware that the council chairman is already going to bring some relief materials today. But the state will also bring some relief materials. Continue to be peaceful. Continue to see how you are going to survive. But because of what has happened, we will not allow you to suffer alone. Your state government will support you with relief materials. We are going back to sit down to take a decision to address this massive spill against the people of Bayelsa State, against the people of Nembe local government area.
My people are here because of the ITO oil spillage for over 1 month, that they cannot be able to come and stop the leakage of the oil spillage. And I think the governor of Bayelsa State is here to see them and feel their pains, and also ITO should come and do the necessary thing to make sure that the spillage should be stopped, and these are their only way of livelihood.
After a 30-minute boat ride, we arrived the Nembe jetty.
I've never seen that magnitude of oil spill directly from the well. I empathize with my brothers, with my sisters of Nembe local government area, and I appeal to NEMA to equally do the same. In situations that are less than this, NEMA has immediately reacted. The people there are short of dying. The people have no food. The people have no means of livelihood. It's not a good day for me. It's indeed not a good day for the people of Bayelsa State. And as a state, we will go back, we will meet, we will take decisions, and the country and the world will hear from us.
A town hall meeting is convened where the people of Nembe also express concern over the 1-month-old pollution in their creeks.
We are suffering, not because of our misdeeds. That spill started on the 1st of last month, November. And today is 1st of December. That is to say, the spill has been on for 1 full month plus 1 day.
Your government will activate every constitutional means necessary to address and redress this magnitude of pollution that we have seen in our environment. I hereby call on the federal government of our country, the joint operators, the NNPC, and ITO to immediately look for a superior technical know-how to contain and stop the spillage of oil into our environment. The only thing we know how to do best is fishing. And that is the beauty of Nigeria. Others have grazing routes. Good. We are fishing routes. Today, our own fishing route is endangered. I call on the federal government to immediately also react and ensure that our fishing route is safe.
This is not a politics. APC, PDP, we are one. Our people are suffering. When you go to the fishing camp, you can see some PDP, you can see some APC. So anything we are doing, we have to keep politics aside and we have to work together. I'm very happy for the governor. And I believe that anything that you have said, you must only do it.
It is a period of sadness for a people whose means of survival and commerce depend largely on the river and its proceeds. Ofieteme George, Arise News.
All right, so joining us now from Bayelsa State for an update on the oil spill in Nembe is Ofieteme George. Ofieteme, good morning. The governor, after returning from that trip, has finally gone there to see the state of things. Ofieteme, it's shocking. So the Christmas tree is still spilling, right? To get that right.
It is not just spilling, it is pouring into the Santa Barbara River, polluting the river, and it's also flowing to neighboring communities and fishing settlements along that coastline. Oil staining the mangrove is just a sign that all is not well yet. Recall that Wednesday last week, the company promised that in 2 days, of course, even if I'm a poor student of mathematics, I know 2 days would have been Friday. But today, just look at it. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then a week after, it is still pouring. And you heard somebody there, an official of a company contracted to contain the spill and kill the well, saying in less than a week, approximately 1 week again, we will be waiting. And while we wait, more crude oil is poured into the environment. That is a sad situation. It is still pouring. There's no contest about that. There's no disputation at all.
Well, Ofieteme George, we were told that Aitio engaged Boots and Coots, that's the name of the company, right? To help secure the wellhead and also secure the well itself. Now, do you have any information in terms of, how far the oil company has gone with that? Is it that the technical crew from Boots and Coots have some special problems? Secondly, the federal government of Nigeria also set up what they called a joint investigating team, including NNPC, NOSDRA, the Upstream Regulatory Commission, and then the Environment Ministry in Bayelsa. We've been told that even that joint investigating team has not been able to do anything 1 month after.
Well, first, let me take the first question. Boots and Coots, the name of the company. I even heard Halliburton from an official of ITO when he spoke to me last week. It may be that they have registered their presence because we saw badges there and it appears they are working. Whatever the work is, I am not in that professional position to say they have done well or they are still working or they have gone far. You see, the focus is the company gave 2 days. It's gone beyond 2 days. The right thing to do is for the company to come back and say, maybe due to some technical hitches, we're extending the date. The company hasn't said anything about that. Rather, more like a diatribe against this day and, of course, the MD about we've been focused or fixated on the company. No. We would rather see ourselves as partners in progress, that when the company eventually does the killing of the well, we want to be there to report to the world the good news that the well has finally been killed. But so far, nothing of that nature. What we saw yesterday is alarming. We are concerned about the helpless people who live along the coastline. You talked about a committee being constituted. Well, I don't know how far that committee has gone. I think the first thing for the committee to do is to visit the site. First of all, get a first-hand experience of what is happening there. Of course, involving us journalists to be part of that visit. I haven't heard anything yet. I heard something about the Minister of State for Environment saying about making reference to the spill, that's the magnitude and all that. Ikeazo, that's her name. Has she visited the well? I don't think so, because I'm here. Any personality that comes around, we want to be part of it, to see, working together to see how this thing can come to an end. If we reported that it is spilling, that's sad news. And we want to report, we are eager to report that the well has been killed. We haven't seen anything of that nature. So yesterday, the Bayelsa governor haven't cut short.
The Minister of State that you
The minister was there last week.
Sharon Ikeazo, she said that everything is under control.
Yes.
Apparently, you are more or less saying that the minister lied.
Should I say she lied? Maybe she got information somewhere and then said that it is under control. I think she got an information because she hasn't visited there. If she had visited there and said everything was under control, I would have confidently said she lied. But I think she's depending on information from those who work with her. She hasn't visited there yet. These things don't happen elsewhere in other countries. When something of such nature occurs, it is expected that the Minister of State Environment, even the Minister for Environment, should be there, visit there, see how it is, look at the magnitude of the spill, talk to the people in the language they understand, give them confidence that, look, we are concerned. I haven't seen the minister there. So if she is saying everything is under control, perhaps she is being misled to tell a lie to the world. That's a sad narrative. Yesterday, when the governor cut short his leave and returned to the country, he said he had never seen something of that nature in all of his life. So you can imagine the magnitude of the spill. The visuals are there. You can just see how it is. It is sad. At a point, you're not seeing the river in its true nature. You're seeing oil, this coloration, a rainbow effect on the river. That is sad news. It's a source of worry and concern to even environmentalists who look at it that, hey, the effect of this may not be in the immediate, but later, when you talk about cancer, diseases associated to that, you trace it back to months and years back when they inhaled the air. The air was not fresh at all. It wasn't friendly, if I can use the word. We were in a hurry to leave there, but yet the governor stayed back. At a point, they said, you can't go beyond this point. He insisted that he has to get to that point. And it got to a point where they said, Your Excellency, you can't go beyond this point. And then he could get a clear view of how it is spilling into the environment. At that point, he decided to engage the company that is doing the cleanup. He was asking them questions. In fact, he committed them to say some things. That was how we got to know that in less than a week, the well will be killed. And you heard how many thousand barrels, put in a barge. And what about the thousands of barrels that have been spewed into the river? You can't say. At night, do they work? I really can't say. I haven't seen any videos yet. The sad narrative is it is still pouring into the Santa Barbara River. And the people are helpless. Relief materials or no, from state government, from federal government, whatever they can do, let them just do. Food on the table of these people is more important. They have to be alive to see the well killed. Because if many just go down and then the well is killed tomorrow, of what use? It will be a narrative where you point back to the graves of people after the well had been killed. It just reminds me of the Ogoni scenario where the farmers won the case against Shell. Some of those farmers are dead, but their children continued. One will be buried, I think, in a few days' time, somewhere in the community. I just don't want to mention now because I just want to be there. So that is it. This thing should be dealt with while they are still alive. Just one casualty, I was told, unconfirmed, of a 9-year-old girl. That is not confirmed yet. So we shouldn't hear much narratives about this anymore. Let the company do the right thing. Engage international expertise and let this thing be dealt with.
Right, Ovietime. If this footage that we're showing of this ecocide don't do justice. Your words certainly do paint a really vivid picture. And it's really unfortunate that the federal government, in the person of the Minister of State for Environment and the Minister for Environment, seem to have better things to do than to actually visit and are relying on second-hand information or misinformation, as it turns out. But my concern, same as yours, is for the people. Can you give us any updates on the kind of relief materials that have been provided? You know, when the immediate aftermath of this disaster, there was reports of rice and indomie. Has anything improved in that regard? And also, the governor mentioned NEMA and seemed to feel that NEMA was remiss in not providing support. And indeed, the conversation from the federal government angle has been focused on NNPC and Nostra. What have you heard about NEMA intervening in this disaster?
I haven't heard anything about the National Emergency Management Agency. Not even one word. I haven't seen them. They haven't come at all. If this does not attract NEMA to Nembe, to Bayelsa, what else would attract NEMA? A place where you're talking about oil that has been greasing the wheels of the Nigerian economy since 1956. And now Oloibri seems to have been forgotten. Now, this is Oil Well 01, OML 29. They call it a non-producing wellhead, where you're seeing crude oil pour into the environment. And NEMA is not yet here. When will NEMA come? I don't think we are hoping and waiting for Godot. I don't think so. This gives me concern. You talked about palliatives. Yes, relief materials. Yeah, ITO did that. ITO did that on the 13th of November, as far as my memory serves. And then the local government chairman, Alalibo West, did that a few days ago. And then the governor said it's not good enough. They should continue. And then the state government was going to do something between yesterday and today to ensure that the people have food on their table. Just look at this sad scene, a sad scenario. People who depend on the river for survival, for livelihood, for commerce, buying and selling, can no longer do that. Now, where would they get food from? Even to leave that area, to come to town, I'm not talking about within Nembe, to come to Yenagoa. Now, that's some distance. How can they afford it? With boats? Boats would be those who have money to do that. Canoes, when you're riding on the river, in the Pasambri River, in fact, typically Bayelsa State, you're seeing canoes, not boats. Boats are for those who can afford it. Now, how can they paddle their canoes and come to Yenagoa? Come to Yenagoa and do what? They can't come. They don't have fishes to even sell. What they normally do is they get the fishes desiccated at the waterfront. People come and buy and go back to Yenagoa and wherever they are coming from, even outside the state. Now they can't even do that. The health issue, again, is something that gives me goose pimples. I'm shaking right here because they can't afford it. Right. How can? The state government, the governor made a promise that health is another thing that they want to focus on, to make sure the health centers are equipped, of course, for them to get drugs. In the meantime, in the interim, they just have to stay alive to see this well killed finally.
All right. Oviatemi, please, I'll beg you, protect yourself. It's really important. And please, when you're reporting anywhere around that, get your face mask, be properly guarded because of the fumes, because we want you safe and alive. Thank you so much, Oviatemi. George there from Bayelsa. That's all we have on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Roto Sudiri, Michael Wilson, Aaron Akeja. Let's give us updates on Africa, global business and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Roto Sudiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning. Good morning,
Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rafai. Good morning to all our viewers. We kick off with an Expo 2020, or 2020 Expo in the United Arab Emirates. President Buhari departed yesterday for the Expo. The theme is Connecting Minds and Creating the Future. It's running from October all the way through to March of 2021, but the president will just be there for the weekend. There's a Nigerian pavilion display that's taking place tomorrow. People is hopefully going to secure some foreign direct investments. There's a investment theme forum on Saturday, which is being put together by the Ministry of Trade and Investment. He's going with a pretty big entourage. The Minister of Trade and Investment is going with him. The Minister of Foreign Affairs is going with him. The Minister of Finance, the Hadi Sirika, the Minister of Aviation, maybe he's going to get an airline for Nigerian Air. He's there as well. Minister of Agriculture, Minister Pantami, Minister of Digital Economy. I mean, it's a big entourage. So we hope they secure some foreign investments while they are there. The president will be back on Sunday, December the 5th. We move to Akiwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank. Very interesting point from him here. He said that Nigeria should refrain from tax hikes, that just because we have such a low tax to GDP ratio, that we shouldn't be quick to increase taxes. He says that, look, other countries around the world that have higher taxes have corresponding welfare nets and infrastructures to support their populations. But the catch-22 is that in order to get the welfare nets that take care of populations, you need to raise taxes. So how does Nigeria get out of that? So he's saying that we should refrain, but it's caused a bit of a debate there with his point. We move from Nigeria to Kenya. Kenya's inflation has slowed year on year in November to 5.8%, its lowest level since April, where it was, I believe, or May, where it was 5.87%. Mainly due to non-alcoholic beverages and food slowing down. There was also transport, health, education. But Kenya is enjoying some single-digit inflation there. So 5.8% year-on-year from 6.4% in October. Still in Kenya, there's a launch of an app, a website, Deaf Elimu Banking. Deaf Elimu Plus is a startup that has put together this training tool for bankers in Kenya in collaboration with FSD Kenya, which is financial deepening, which is a trust that is put together, an independent trust for financial inclusion, and the Kenya Bankers Association. The Central Bank Governor of Kenya, Dr. Ndoroje, he's going to be at the launch, which is taking place today. So basically, this website, this app, allows banking employees to train themselves in sign language. Deaf Elimu is a startup that is based on a startup that teaches people about sign language, and what they will be doing is using common banking terms, checking account, savings account, interest rates. Bankers will be able to use sign language to be able to speak to disabled folks. So it's meant to be able to, it's for financial inclusion, essentially. A follow-up to yesterday, Kenya Airways said that they're sticking with South Africa. I mean, they'll have some stricter testing and screening and so on. But Kenya Airways is maintaining its flights to Southern Africa, Namibia, South Africa. Its South African routes are not changing. So as opposed to Angola and the other nations yesterday, African nations, yes, that said that they would be halting flights. So Kenya Airways, they're keeping the solidarity going. And finally, in Malawi, First Capital Bank of Malawi is tying its Christmas bonuses for its staff to vaccines. The bank is saying that if you want to get your Christmas bonus once it's approved by the board, if you're not vaccinated, you will miss out on your Xmas bonus. So this is a very interesting development to see how many more private sector folks mandate vaccines. And that's our update.
So I'd like to talk about taxation and what Akiwumi
additional AFDB, yeah.
I think it's spot on, because the truth has to be said. The reason why you have a low tax to GDP ratio is because you've not put in appropriate measures to collect those taxes.
Okay.
You know, we keep enunciating, I think the Vice President was enunciating the argument recently that you have, over 91 billionaires that pay less than 10 million income tax. But we know those billionaires that have so much money that pay reduced income tax. Why don't you go after them to pay their own fair share of this taxation? We know them, but we keep, taxation has become political as everything in this country. We know these billionaires that are getting tax holidays for doing nothing. We know these billionaires that have companies that are evading taxes or they're not paying their fair share in the taxes. So why don't you go after them? We have a country where we have loads and loads of private jets stuck everywhere in our airports, but duty, not on them. You saw the story recently in the news that over 31 billion was supposed to be paid as customs duties for over how many private jets that came into the country. We have a country where the customs cannot collect adequate revenue and taxation. We have the country where a couple of years ago, we put taxation on luxury goods. But people are still popping luxury champagne in parties, and there's no taxation of those champagnes. So we don't implement those appropriate, parameters at collecting the taxes. It's not by increasing tax, because everywhere in the world, they're lowering taxes. You remember what happened recently, at the international conference of OECD countries and some other countries in the world to lower corporate tax to about 15%. Nigeria hasn't signed up to it, but that's what that countries are doing because the competitive market out there. And the way you can drive in foreign direct investment is to lower the taxes, make the conditions habitable for businesses to come in, then you can get a lot. A clear model in this is Ireland. Ireland doesn't have any oil under their ground. They don't produce anything. The accelerated development Ireland has had over the years is just from taxes. What does Ireland do? They talk to top companies like Google, Microsoft, and the likes, and they say, we'll get you a good tax deal. You can even pay 12% or 8%, and they get the money. And that's why Ireland is collecting pound for pound more in taxation than what Britain, their big neighbors, are collecting. So we can make it work for us. We can increase tax GDP ratio, but it's not by increasing taxation. It's by making it possible to be able to collect those taxes, those loose taxes here and there. Why is it that we have about 6 to 10% tax GDP ratio, and Benin Republic, just Benin Republic, our neighbors here, have got 15% tax GDP ratio? Well, so we know the truth. Let's speak the truth. Let's stop this.
Let me start with Kenya.
Kenya Airways, okay.
Is apparently not following the example of Rwanda Air or Angola, Airways that had decided to ban flights from Southern African countries, particularly South Africa. So Kenya Air says, well, we allow flights, but we must note that yes, this looks like solidarity. This looks like an expression of African brotherhood. But at the same time, Kenya Airways is taking the necessary precautions. For you to go onto their flight, you must have taken the PCR test 96 hours before, and then you must follow the necessary protocols. But I had made a point about African brotherhood and how each country, is within its sovereign rights to make certain decisions, whether with regard to public health or any other issue within the basket of bilateral relations. Now, in Malawi, you have the bank, the First Capital Bank of Malawi saying no vaccine, no Christmas bonus. Christmas bonuses are given based on the discretion of management. And in this particular regard, you'll find this particular bank providing an incentive. In a country like Malawi, where yes, although 1.41 million vaccine doses have been administered, there is, vaccine hesitancy, low uptake of the vaccine doses available, up to a point that Malawi had to destroy, some of the doses that it had. And what has now happened, you find the private sector supporting government to encourage people to take vaccines. And we hope that this will perhaps have some effect. It's not only this bank that has done this. In the United States, we have many examples of governments and companies, private sector, providing necessary incentives, which had inspired us to say that perhaps in Nigeria, if we provide necessary incentives, including pepper soup and
jollof rice, well cooked, charcoal, fired jollof rice. Maybe more Nigerians will also be encouraged to take the vaccine. But what we have is that since December 1, federal workers have been told if you have not taken the vaccine, then don't come to work. Although there's been a pushback to see whether there could be an extension till March. For now, the message we have out there is that, look, take the vaccine. Whether it's Omicron or whatever, take the vaccine. The UK, for example, now is investing £2 billion to buy up to about 114 million doses of vaccines. The UK is ready to repeat the entire exercise. You just take the vaccine. Well, that's another matter entirely. Whether some people should be, taking a dessert when some people have not even taken anything. But you may say leadership, governance, and all that. Finally, the example of Kenya, where the banking association is introducing an application for deaf, physically challenged bankers. I think that that's something to commend, particularly in our own context. I hope that the banking association
in Nigeria, the Bankers Committee, we take a look at this and see how the fiscal challenge can also be encouraged here in Nigeria. You talk about financial inclusion. I think it's more than inclusion. It's also about recognizing the rights of persons who are fiscally challenged. Nigeria in 2020 set up a disabilities commission. The big story we have had from that place is how they've been fighting over money and how there has been fraud over 750 million. We have the law, we have the commission, but nobody is really paying attention to the concerns of persons who are physically challenged in Nigeria. So that's a good example from Kenya.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on that app from Kenya. I don't even see it as a matter of altruism. The fact of the matter is that persons living with disabilities are not to be othered in the way that they are.
Yes.
Because those of us who pray to grow old, we are all on that inexorable slide into decrepitude, aren't we?
Definitely.
Really, because you do start to lose your hearing,
Definitely.
your sight. We're going to end up there. So it's in all of our self-interest to promote these kinds of apps, quite frankly. And as for Kenya Airways, yes, it's solidarity with South Africa, but beyond that, it's solidarity with the science, the all-important science. That is a more practical, effective way of going about things. The screening should be stringent, and also, quarantine when you arrive in the destination for 10 days. That's how to go about it. And then travelers will decide if they can be bothered to go through all that palaver and stay at home, or if it's that important and they go. And they are not traipsing around, spreading disease or anything like that. That is what to do, rather than this knee-jerk travel ban that increasingly the science does show is just not effective. Unfortunately for us, COVID is a respiratory virus. A travel ban simply doesn't cut it, and that's just that. About Akinwumi Adesina, you and I had that conversation recently about your friend, was it in Norway? And the benefits that they get because they pay the taxes that they do. Earlier this morning, we had a conversation about some places with the infrastructure of Aleppo that I would not mention. So really, you don't get any kind of bang for your buck if you're going to be told to pay high taxes. We're all our own government. We supply all our needs as if we are the government, even security, even basics like water. So really, that argument for me has never been convincing of increasing taxes here.
Taxes are high in New York, but at least the system works.
This is the thing. This is the thing. The system has to work. Well, thank you so much, Rotis.
Thank you.
Moving on now to more business update. Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. I was very interested to hear your discussion. You lot should be running the country, I think. It's very, very interesting. Anyway, enough said about that. Wild price swings, as you would imagine, precisely because of all that volatility you've just been talking about. A lot of very powerful stuff from the United States, though, as well. I'll come on to that in a moment. But what we're seeing is a very, very difficult picture. It's like, as you were saying, earlier in the program, it's that people are introducing these travel bans when perhaps they ought to be looking in slightly more detail at what's going on. Asia-Pacific stocks mixed, a bit again about Omicron, really, and Razer shares plunging in Hong Kong. I'll come on to that as well. Hong Kong's Hang Seng rose about 0.2%. Razer, R-A-Z-E-R, in the city dropped by more than 8%. The company said they were going to take the consortium private. China's interesting as usual. The Shanghai Composite's flatlining, basically. This strange view from the United States, I don't necessarily share it, but I could be proved wrong. What do I know? That China will not be that much affected by the variants as they come, because in the past their factories have been quite resilient. I don't know really, but that's a view being taken by one of the major US banks. As far as Japan's concerned, the Nikkei down 0.4%, and Japan has asked international airlines to stop booking flights into Japan. US, that heavily mutated variant in Northern California, one case, enough to send things plunging yesterday. Scientists will have a few weeks to decide what's actually going on. However, stock futures back overnight. But you just think about it, the Dow was down 460 points yesterday as the result of one case. This is the kind of uncertain thing. What does that tell you? Does that say that stocks are slightly overvalued or people are overreacting? I don't know. I'll leave that with you. Jerome Powell has said, chairman of the Fed, he expects policymakers to be talking slightly more sharply about a reduction in tapering, and he predicted that that Joe Biden has been joining in, saying that before the holidays, as they call it there, everything's in good shape and the country won't react. They've done what they can to try to get through bottlenecks in that country. Well, we'll see about that. Here's a quick one for you. Disney. Now we know that Disney's changing massively. It's doing extremely well on its streaming services. It's replaced Bob Iger, who resigned a while ago, or says he's going to resign, by this woman Susan Arnold. What's interesting about her is she's been a member of the board for some time, a lead member of the board for 14 years, not actually been connected with the company, but she's an expert on the way in which Bob Iger took the thing forward towards streaming rather than just fun parks. The crisis is not yet over. Omicron variant could lead to another blow to supply chains. I think we sort of know this. This is a general view coming. China's expected to double down on its zero COVID policy and so on. That will mean that ports will close. I don't really know how this ties in with what I was saying earlier about China actually being better as a result of the lockdowns, but there we are. Now here's something which we knew was going to happen. I mentioned it before on the programme, and here we go. Turkey's finance minister has resigned. Lutfi Elvan has gone. A plunge in the lira. It's been replaced by an Erdogan loyalist who's called Nureddin Nabati, for the record. What he says that there's no problem with keeping rates low, even in the current market inflation. He thinks, again, that, as we were saying yesterday, that low rates will help the country prosper. The lira, he won't need reminding, has lost 40% of its value since September. Benchmark rate is now 15%, 15%, despite inflation at 30%. That's got to be quite high in the world. Okay, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the EU, is actually calling for a discussion amongst the EU on mandatory vaccination. Now, here's the thing. So you've got loads of different countries there. They've all got different policies about vaccination. Austria is going to introduce compulsory vaccination. Greece is fining over 60 is €100 if they refuse vaccination. So it's going to be some kind of getting together. I suspect there'll be long discussions about that. As far as the UK is concerned, two stories here. First of all, Brexit is apparently holding, that's according to the FT, and the FT was a very anti-Brexit newspaper, but trade talks between the UK and the US are being held back because of worries about a peace process in Ireland and the island of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Sorry to complicate that. A lot of problems in Congress about that. The thing about Americans is that they all can trace their thing back to Irish roots. They tend to do it. Such was the immigration 150 years ago into the United States. They all feel that they know all about Ireland and all about Northern Ireland, but I leave that with you. As far as UK households are concerned, energy prices have doubled over the past 18 months. That will crimp spending, no question about that. Consumption-led economy might be all right till Christmas. Let's see what happens after that. And as far as the two commodities we tend to concentrate on, finally, oil, relatively volatile. Somebody producing the figure that it could be $150 a barrel by the end of next year. Well, it could be, and then again, it might not be. And lots of people I've been talking to, they wouldn't say this publicly, but a lot of energy companies have been saying to me, actually, the oil market's broken. It's not fit for purpose. Gold has had another underwhelming day. Again, the only reason I can think of that, as I was saying yesterday, it's looking at about $17.92 an ounce. That's quite a bearish signal if you take the moving day averages into account, as technical people tend to do. I think it's nothing more than people actually want to release a bit of liquidity to take advantage of the bargains coming up in equities. But I could be completely wrong. Anyway, that's your global view.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm sure even if the Ottomans were still here, they'll be surprised at the way Recep Tayyip Erdogan is running the Turkish economy, because it's appalling and it's destructive. I'd like to talk about real quickly what is happening as regards the tariffs. So the Americans are not removing some Trump-era tariffs from Britain because they want Britain to behave themselves against Northern Ireland. Let me explain all what is happening on the Channel Islands for me. And secondly, I'll go back to inflation. OECD brought out a projection for inflation recently. OECD, the group of rich countries, they did say that inflation will bump up to about 4.4% in the new year. The outlook is not good. They've even scaled down the growth prospect. We expected about 5.2, but now it's reduced to about 4.4. What is happening? Will this, by the OECD, push those guys at the ECB to look at inflation critically?
Wouldn't take the OECD to do that as far as the ECB is concerned. Very, very difficult for them. I mean, this one-size-fits-all interest rate policy is very difficult to implement over all these 27 economies actually at different stages of their economic development. How on earth did anybody think that that was going to work? That is a problem for the ECB, and that's something that they earn their money by trying to solve. We saw yesterday, did we not, or was it the day before, Germany's inflation hitting 6%. And we ruminated about that by thinking that there'll be a lot of people, they won't necessarily still be alive now, but there'll be strong memories about hyperinflation in Germany between the two world wars and what that did to families, never mind war casualties and the rest of it, what it did to the health of a nation. And it was only through the strength of the Bundesbank and getting the mark together, and then the Deutsche Mark, then creating that and making that the most powerful thing. We used to have in this country a fixed exchange rate against the Deutsche Mark. I mean, we just did, because it was felt to be even more powerful because it was bigger than the Swiss franc, which used to be the go-to currency for no movement whatsoever. So yes, I feel as though the ECB is going to be reacting quite strongly to that OECD thing, but it won't be influenced by it. It'll just be another thing, making sure that they come to a table with something going on. As far as Northern Ireland's concerned, it is so complicated. Basically, what the UK Ireland, away from Northern Ireland, which as your viewers may know is part of the island of Ireland, it gets very complicated. There have been troubles, there have been problems, there have been killings, they weren't described as wars, but they were, between Ireland, between the people who want a completely united Ireland and don't want to unite, and there's one united Northern Ireland to be part of the UK. You see how complicated it gets. And the thing is, it's where the border of the EU actually is and what that means to the various economies. The Americans are worried, and I would stress this, the Americans are worried because they think they know about Ireland, and what they're worried about is the peace process that they think they were in total control of all the way back to 1996, 97. Now, it's a long time ago. Now, again, it's an excuse for further deals to be made and so on. Not saying they're right, not saying they're wrong. Life is complicated when you have democracies swapping borders or not with each other. That's where this complication is going to go on forever. But the UK will, as I understand it, be saying that we do not want a hard border. We want the goods to flow without being held up into Ireland itself from Northern Ireland. It's immensely complicated, but holding up trade talks just because of that, I think, is something that suits the politicians in Congress more than it suits the rest of the world.
Okay, in about a year, Turkey has lost 3 finance ministers who resigned, including one of them being son-in-law of the president. So why doesn't the president of Turkey just take over that portfolio? If it were in Africa, that's how it's done. It would just combine, the finance portfolio to his, presidential position. Because even as at yesterday, he was still defending his unorthodox economics and his faith in what he calls, a growth strategy for investment. Even when the lira has plunged, it's now about 14 lira to the dollar. So why doesn't he just take that portfolio so that we have clarity as to his intentions? Now, the United States, President Biden has been boasting that the economy is in a very strong place and that the average American family has done very well, and that is not due to luck. That is due to efforts made by the government to address supply chain disruptions and all of that. And then he's very optimistic about this spending plan, the 1.9 trillion, which is still before the Senate, and there is no indication that he will get any support from the Republican side of the aisle. And yet he says this is what will solve, the problem of inflation. Was that mere political talk, some kind of response to Jay Powell and the concerns expressed by Jay Powell about inflation, with the consumer price at about 6.2% in the United States? And then finally, the House of Reps in the US is inviting executives of cryptocurrency companies. Well, we know India is planning to ban cryptocurrency. China has already done so. Well, the House of Reps, the US House of Reps, is looking into financial innovation. Are we likely to see some kind of policy direction in the United States opposed to cryptocurrency? Not the kind of situation they have, of course, in El Salvador, where it's been adopted as a legal tender.
Cryptocurrencies probably in the United States will be part of their payment system. I think that it's almost impossible to stop the rise of Bitcoin and the rest of it. I think far more interesting. I mean, that's one thing. That's what the kids will get involved in, and those who want to risk money before it, because it's not part of the system yet. I think much more interesting is whether or not central banks embrace cryptocurrencies, which of course they may well do. There could be a bit of that in the UK. There certainly could be a bit of that in the United States. I feel as though the House of Representatives is probably trying to get its head round how they actually work. I mean, it's pretty complicated to understand how fiat currencies, which are backed by central governments, work, and what central government bankers actually do. So that's complicated enough. But to work out how cryptos would fit into that is a totally different thing. If what it means is that the central banks are creating their own other currency that they have direct control over and can see where that money actually goes, when it goes into, and who it goes to. That's directly targeted money. Well, that's a whole different thing, and that becomes almost legislation by taxation, doesn't it? Because you can actually see, or monetarism probably is a better word. You can actually see where the money's going. That's what the House of Representatives will be doing. But there'll be many of them who'll be scratching their heads long after they've had the discussions, because it's incredibly complicated. But I think that's the way they're going there. As far as Biden's concerned and the supply chains, well, I was looking at that this morning. I don't really see what he's talking about. How can central government actually affect supply chains? Yes, we know that the ports of the twin big ports in California, Long Beach and Los Angeles, have actually got better. We know, I think I was reporting about a week ago, there's a 30% reduction in waiting times there. But whether that's anything to do with Joe Biden or not, I don't know. What I see about him is somebody who is desperately flailing around to get domestic support before the midterms, hence the infrastructure plan, hence the difficulty of getting it through. Everybody preys upon a weak president, and that's what they're doing. And he is a weak president. This is not about politics. This is about what he's done. He promised a lot of things, and so far he's done very few of them. He got the infrastructure plan thing through, but the big social spending thing is not happening. Now, it may be that on Friday, or tomorrow, we get some fantastic blow you out of the water employment numbers from the non-farm payrolls in the United States. Will that have been anything to do with Joe Biden? Suspect not. I think it's probably more about hirings. It's about end of furlough. It's about people going back to work, and it's about industries reinventing themselves.
Turkey. I thought you were going to comment on the president of Turkey. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, the Turkey thing. I thought we'd done... Yeah, I beg your pardon, sorry. Okay, yeah, so Lutfi Elvan is replaced by an Erdogan loyalist. I mean, what do I need to say about this? What does it tell you if you've gone through 3 finance ministers in very short order? It says a lot to me. Does it suggest to you that the president is listening to them, or is he just forging ahead with his own policies? Doesn't matter whether they're family or not. It's not very good. But what it does is... I think with the lira at that kind of level, and as you were noting yesterday, with the manufacturing expertise of Turkey, that's a big rival to the EU on its eastern border. I think that probably is the more interesting aspect of this. Why on earth they think that keeping interest rates at that kind of level is going to help them. I don't know, unless it means that they feel as though they're going to navigate out of these kind of difficulties with interest rates at that sort of level. I mean, I have to say, if they do, then good luck to them, but it goes against everything that we think of in monetary policy, i.e. inflation up, interest rates up. Simple as that.
Well, thank you very much, Michael Wilson. We'll see you again tomorrow.